South fans, in our third pre-season encounter, we've come away with an impressive 1-0 victory against the St Albans Saints. Obviously, it was announced earlier in the week that we were to be playing two friendly matches this week. Obviously tonight against the St Albans Saints and tomorrow against Brunswick City. The game against Brunswick City was cancelled, which meant that pretty much all players, I think, that were deemed to be fit and available were present today and within the squad. We saw, actually quite a decent crowd as well at Churchill Reserve. It is a ground I haven't been to in probably, I'd estimate 3 years. It is a ground that also probably 10 to 15 years ago I'd come quite a few times. And, congratulations to the St Albans Saints and the people involved in the club. Today, I believe, was the first time they played a match under lights. They've had 6 light towers installed on the main pitch. That's a huge upgrade, I think, for any football club in Australia. Let alone a club like the St Albans Saints, who always have, in my opinion, batted above their weight. And it's great to see that they're improving their facilities. They've also had their second pitch, again, just leaning on my experience from being here 10 to 15 years ago, they always had the main pitch and the other pitches really, they were okay. But, they've really got a second, a nice second pitch that is. Great grass cover, flat, and also has lighting as well. So, congratulations, as mentioned, to everybody involved. It's great to see their infrastructure being improved. They also do have, which they had previously, I think maybe 3 to 4 years ago, they put in, 200 to 300 seats, but it was the first time that I actually utilised that seating. And it's great to see that the spectator comfort, in Fox Street was top notch. So on to our starting 11, South fans. We started with new signing Pierce Clark in goals, Brad Norton playing at left back, Jake Marshall and Liram Almazi formed the central defensive pairing with Amadou Karoma playing at right back. Now, you might be thinking, why I haven't announced him yet, but Steve Folan started the game as a defensive midfielder. I believe Luke Pavlu, actually, it's certain, he picked up 2 yellow cards in his last NPL Vic encounter last season, meaning he's out of round 1. So obviously Coach Esteban Quintas is going to be experimenting with who can potentially fill in, that obvious gap for round 1. And today it was played by Steve Folan, who, once again showed that he is a player that's very calm on the ball, has great vision, big body, played relatively well as well. He was joined in the middle of the park by Melvin Beckett. Daniel Clark also started. On the right-hand side, we had Jerry Salathos. On the left-hand side, new signing and returning South Melbourne player Chris Irwin. And up front, we had Big Harrison Sawyer, who I must say, South fans, from a physical perspective, would be one of the most imposing strikers, I'd say, in the NPL system. Tall, well over 6 foot, I'd say. Quite well built. Looks like, when he gallops, is quite quick as well. So it's something that we haven't had for a while. Obviously we had Milos Lujic up front, who was a very tall player. I wouldn't necessarily say he was absolutely physically imposing. Obviously he would compete against any centre-back purely because, he was quite tall. But, not necessarily the quickest player. His muscle, his level of strength, was probably, something that could have always been improved. But in Harrison Sawyer, just when you see him, he just seems from a physical perspective to be a sort of player up front that South Melbourne, during the NPL era hasn't had. So be very interesting to see how he goes. So on to the first half, South fans. In general, I think it's fair to say that, the match was... It was evenly balanced. I'd say probably South may have slightly edged possession, but to be fair, especially down St Albans left-hand side, they had quite a bit of joy. They were playing the player on the left, quite often. It was a good tussle between him and Amadou Karoma, actually. There was many half chances in the first half. I'd say the only, chances that may have been considered slightly a click above a half chance actually fell to... Jake Marshall, first in the 9th minute. It was a corner from Daniel Clark. Great corner to the top of the 6-yard area, maybe slightly out, maybe 8 yards out. Marshall found himself unmarked. Unfortunately, just wasn't able to meet his header perfectly, and unfortunately he headed wide. And then right at the death in the 45th minute, almost a carbon copy. I'm not sure if Clark took the corner again. This time Marshall did meet the header, got it on target, but it was actually quite a soft header, so it was comfortably cleared off the line. And yeah, as mentioned, it was a pretty fairly even game in the first half. I felt both teams are still trying to find themselves this season. Obviously, with South Melbourne having quite a deep squad, it's also going to be a situation, I'm sure, for Esteban Quintas to see, how players are pushing each other, in pre-season, who's performing slightly better. And I think we saw that in the second half. We saw some players come on. And in general, the team lifted. It may also be South fans. It's obviously very early to call. I'm just trying to find reasons as to why we seem to lift in the second half. Quite perceptibly, I'd say. 20 to 30% better in the second half. Maybe also our 10-day fitness camp, I think, in Shepparton may have had an impact. But anyways, on to the second half. The immediate change was Nikola Reganovic replaced Pierce Clark in goals, and just on Pierce Clark, may I add, he didn't have much to do in the first half. There were a couple of times when he gloved the ball above his head. A few times the South Melbourne defenders played him on the deck, and he, quickly switched play, showed that he also had a great long ball. It's very early to call because, as mentioned, we haven't seen him in the South shirt that much. Obviously, we did see him have a great season with Dandenong Thunder last season, but he just seems to be, a young keeper who's ready to be a sensational keeper at this level, South fans. It's quite early to call, but, from what I saw today, it was quite positive signs. So, that's worth noting for Pierce Clark. Now, as mentioned, Nikola Reganovic began the second half. There were no other substitutions. We did see between minutes 55 and 60, though, quite a few substitutions, which really show our depth, South fans. Ben Gibber came on for Amadou Karoma at right back. Perry Lambropoulos came on for Brad Norton at left back. Luke Pavlou came on for Folan in defensive midfield. And Nick Cruceratis came on for Jerry Salalos. Now, it's also worth saying, just before we mentioned in the 63rd minute when we almost went ahead that Liram Almazi, I felt, was building throughout the match. He just didn't put a foot wrong. He just looks really, really composed, very good on the deck. And he also showed in the 63rd minute that he's also got, some other qualities. It was a quick exchange, small, maybe I'd say quick 1-2 exchange, which released Almazi towards the left-hand side, in almost the final third for South Melbourne, and he whipped in an unbelievable, vicious left ball, which Sawyer, I don't think he met it absolutely perfectly. He got enough of the ball and got it on target and forced the keeper into a sharp save to his right-hand side. The ball went out for a corner. But, just seeing, having a centre-back that, seems to be able to take the ball forward, can pass well, can play 1-2s, whip in good balls. That's a really well-rounded centre-back, South fans. If you were to say, is there anything at the moment which, I haven't seen Liram Almazi play all that much, but, the only thing I can say that after today's encounter that he seems to be missing, obviously, is some upper body physical strength. But it's not that he gets bullied off the ball, because he's also quite a tall player. So he's a really, really great prospect. I think if he stays fit, he could potentially have an outstanding season for South. So as mentioned, the ball went out for a corner, and then from the subsequent corner, the ball actually fell to Almazi at the back post, and he connected it well with a side foot effort. Thought it was going to be 1-0, but unfortunately went straight into the St. Albans player who was on the line and managed to comprehensively clear. I mean, Almazi did, get quite a bit of the ball, but credit to the St. Albans player on the line, cleared the ball comfortably. And, at that point, that was probably, our best period. From then on, we started to lift. And the goal came soon after, South fans, in the 66th minute. Again, it was Almazi with a searching ball over the top. Release Sawyer. That might be something we see quite often from both those players, provided, of course, they stay fit. He managed to, get a gallop, behind the St. Albans defence, was brought down, and then stepped up to actually take the penalty. The keeper did guess the right way, got a good glove on it. To be fair, it was to the right-hand side of the keeper, but Sawyer had put enough power and enough angle on it to make sure that the ball still went in. Unfortunately for South Melbourne, that was our first goal of the preseason, the first goal for Harrison Sawyer in the mighty blue and white. That put us up 1-0. We then saw between minutes 74 and 76, some more substitutions. We saw Josh Doran replace Nikola Reganovic. It was clear that coach Esteban Quintas was looking to play as many players as possible. In fact, every player, I think, who was suited up today made their way on the pitch. Youngster Matthew Lutrakis came on for Melbourne Beckett, and youngster Georgie Zabos came on for Jake Marshall as well. But at that point, South Melbourne was in good control. We were dominating possession. We looked to be more threatening. We also had, it's worth mentioning, a really good opportunity. Actually, it was actually just before those players came on. Again, it was Sawyer who basically latched onto a ball from Chris Aratis. It was a good run, actually, from Nick Chris Aratis, and it must be said, he did seem to get in behind a couple of times today in dangerous positions, which was really good to see. This time, he whipped in a ball. It was approximately the 68th minute from the right-hand side, really vicious low ball, and Sawyer, unfortunately, he got a slight touch on it, but it just wasn't enough to, direct the ball towards goal. Went just past the post, and unfortunately the score remained at 1-0. From then on, South fans, as mentioned, we tended to dominate possession. No real major threat on Josh Doran's goal, and really, I think it was a deserved 1-0 victory here at Churchill Reserve. I'd say we probably were a little bit unlucky not to score a second. Maybe could have gotten a third if we were more clinical, but a really, really good hit out. Great to see all the players getting an opportunity. As mentioned on Twitter, the players that were out today were Josh Meeker and Peter Skapetis. They were both in the stands. I did ask, actually, Peter Skapetis how far away he is. Obviously, last week against Altona, he did pick up an injury. He said to me maybe 1 or 2 weeks. So hopefully we'll see him back on the pitch soon. Zach Bates, I asked around. Apparently, he could have played today. He wanted to play today, but there is still an injury concern on him, so we didn't risk him. Marcus Schroen, I think, is also carrying an injury too, but, again, both players expected to play very soon. So, overall, South fans, an encouraging performance, probably a click above from our game against Altona. It was great to see, many players get a run, have an impact, and really it was absolutely special to see a masterclass performance, albeit in pre-season, by Lirim Almazi. Go South!